Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Steelheads Weekly, episode 2 of Brampton Steelheads Weekly with myself and Mark Freitas. Mark, how you doing this week?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great because we had a couple great Steelheads games that we're going to talk about today, as well as a couple articles that you've written on the Steelheads so far this season. But yes, a great start to the year for the Brampton Steelheads so far this year, going 4-1 through the first 2 weeks at this point. And the dynamic duo, as you called them, are well underway into the season. If you want to touch on that just to start the episode.
The dynamic duo of Porter Martone and Carson Raycroft is really good, man. Um, they as soon as I put that article out, the next few games they're just popping off again. So
Yeah.
they are taking the OHL by storm with what they are doing. You and I witnessed it Saturday. 16 seconds, I believe it was in the
16,
game.
16 seconds, and then the next day, which we'll get to, 18 seconds into the game. So they start
Yeah,
strong, which has been, I wouldn't say an issue, but they definitely haven't done that in the past. So yeah, definitely.
no, there is some good chemistry there with those two guys, and if they can get like a proper centerman in between them, because um, excuse me, it says on the Steelheads app that Rycroft is a winger,
Mhm.
but they're starting him at center, which is interesting to me. So if they can get a center in between those two men during the season, oh, buddy,
I
they'll
think
take off.
I think right now he's playing center. I'm just assuming this is speculation, but I think he's playing center because he is a Seattle draft pick. Obviously, he's been to camp there before, so he has experience. Like, he's NHL caliber,
Yeah,
so I feel like he can like play the center position at the junior level, right? Like, maybe not at the
yeah,
NHL level, but he can help at the center position. And obviously, that line looks great. So I wouldn't touch anything right now unless you absolutely need a like bona fide number one centerman between them, because that would really take that line over the top. Like, it would be
yeah,
unstoppable, because it already kind of is at this point so far through the first couple games. But yeah, if they were to add a centerman, which they still can, right? Like, we've been talking about it, like they definitely can at the deadline or even before if they want. But I think that's just my thought so far, that he's playing center just because he has that experience and he's such a good player in the OHL that, adds something else to his game, I guess, at this point too, right?
oh for sure. He's just doing side quests at this point.
That's exactly that's
Put him
exactly
on
what he's doing.
defense
Just see what he does in goal. Like, you can
just for fun.
try him out in
Just
the in between the pipes as well.
exactly, just for fun.
So a couple guys too who've had great starts this season. Obviously, we mentioned Raycroft and obviously Martone. Michael Misa in the league in Saginaw's started very strong, and I saw a couple stats over the
Very.
weekend, and I was like, wow, he's definitely leading the league. Wrong. Porter Martone is leading the league in points. In 5 games, he has 13 points, so he's on pace to absolutely smash what he did last year, and obviously at this point get over 100 points. Even, I think he can probably even do it at this pace if he continues at this pace. Even if he goes to the World Juniors and misses, some significant time with that. So he has
Yeah.
started fantastic, and obviously the new
Oh
captain
yeah.
for the Steelheads. So he started great.
Yeah, and you know what? What I've noticed, out of all the Steelheads captains we've seen over the years, he is the one who has had like the most personality to him,
Yes,
um,
100%.
which is fantastic. So it's something like refreshing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the past captains, because we've seen a lot of one and dones over the last couple of years too, right? Like
Yeah,
back maybe 10 years ago, you would have a captain who would be there for 2 or 3 years, but lately it's been one and dones, and they've had some personality, and obviously they've been household names in back in Mississauga before this year, but Porter Martone brings something to the game right now that is
mhm,
so exciting, and like gets, like, when he scores, we talked about it last episode with his celebrations, right? But just
yeah,
on the bench, in between the whistles, everything like that, like, not only is he leading by example, but he just brings another fun element, at least if you're a fan, obviously not fun if you're an
yeah.
opposing team, to the game as well, that we haven't seen from at least another Steelheads captain in a long, long time. And we've seen it on the team, but not from a captain. So that was a good point too. He brings just so much fun to the game, and he's putting up a bunch of points. He's started like so well this year. It's so fun to watch.
Oh, for sure. And like definitely whoever drafts him this year, they will be getting a very good player.
Definitely. And I mean, he's a late birthday, so obviously third year in the OHL, and will get drafted this year. And it's going to be looking like top 5 at this point, and
Oh,
maybe a little bit
100%.
higher, because he is a great talent and he's going to be a great NHL player as well. So, yeah, go ahead.
For sure. I was going to say, for a little hot take, he'll be right beside Macklin Celebrini next year on the Sharks.
You think so? Well, the Sharks are
That's
going
my
to be
take.
near the bottom.
I think he'll go to the Sharks.
I think that could be a good fit for him as well, coming up with a team like that, because I don't know, he's a late birthday, so we might see him back in Brampton next year again. And obviously, Brampton is a relatively young team, so I mean, they're going to make a push here, obviously this year and possibly next year too. So great start to the season so far, Mark. We'll get into some games that happened. Obviously, we last left off, they were 2-0 against the Erie Otters, and they made their way to Barrie on this past Thursday to play the Barrie Colts, who are supposed to be a pretty good team this year as well. The Eastern Conference is pretty stacked, actually, and we were talking about it off camera and obviously at one of the games, that the Eastern Conference is a real problem this year. It's going to be stacked, like the first maybe 5 teams. We'll see how everything shakes out by the end of the year, but probably the first 5 teams are going to be elite, like very good. So it's going to be a battle for the top there. But they come into Barrie, and Barrie really had nothing the entire game. Like, they go up 3-0. They eventually win 4-1. Another great performance by Ivan Kovic. Would have liked to see him maybe get a break in there, because it was a busy weekend, and we know that, you know, they were playing some pretty good teams the rest of the weekend. But a great game nonetheless. Like, just continuing the season on their hot streak and not looking back in that game.
No, they didn't look back at all. And then they going up, and as we know, they have a hard time in Barrie. It's kind of good to get that little monkey off the back now, opposed to later on in the season. As we know, when they do go, it's never a fun time in that arena.
No, that arena has not been good to this franchise in recent memory. But, I mean, they did win a playoff series there just a couple years ago. But, you know, overall, since becoming the Steelheads, and even when they were the Majors and in the past, not a great arena to play in for this franchise. No. But great performances from Mac Donnell, who, you know, gets on the board here this season with 2 goals. It looked like he had a hat trick, but 2 goals. And Porter Martone again with another 2-goal performance and just putting up a bunch of points. And Raycroft there for, obviously, 3 assists. You know, he's there for the support. But he's a great goal scorer, but he's there for the support at this point.
Exactly. He's like I've already said, this is him. It's all just a game. It's all just going to be, all right, next one, until the playoffs. That's when it's going to matter for these guys.
Yeah, and one theme also in this game and every game so far, I believe, I haven't checked the stats from the last 2 games at this point, but they've been outshooting their opponents heavily, not just outshooting them in every game, which they have, heavily outshooting their opponents. So foot on the gas and not letting up, and that's something I want to talk about with the game against Niagara, which we'll get to in a minute, but foot on the gas is this team. So obviously they had a day off on Friday, and then they come in. We're used to it. This is something I wanted to talk about on the pod too. We are used to the Friday nights and Sunday afternoon games, and I feel like Brampton specifically this year, it started changing over the last 2 seasons, but they're really shaking that up this year. There's maybe a handful, maybe only a few Sunday afternoon games this year. They're all Saturday afternoon, right before you know, the Leaf game, like 4 o'clock starts, and Friday. So I wanted your opinion on that as well, because we were both at, obviously, which we'll get to, the London Knights were in town on Saturday at 4 p.m. It's a different look and a different schedule for the team. What is your opinion on that?
My opinion is I love the Saturday games. I prefer it over, in my opinion, I prefer it over Sundays, but I wish that they would go back to Friday nights at 7:30. I think that'd be beneficial to everyone, because then it gives you the extra 30 minutes if you just get off work. You can head down to the arena, especially being located in Brampton. And as I said to you about the Saturday games on Saturday, I don't mind the Saturday games, unless maybe if it's at like 2 o'clock or even 3, because then you could do that, and then once you're done, you can go for dinner, and then the Leafs are on TV, because obviously, like we've said, they're going to OHL is going to compete the NHL, and we already know who everyone's going to watch, especially in Ontario.
Yeah, and I think.
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
You go on. No, you.
I think there's been a shift in terms of. I like how you brought up the Leaf thing too, but I think there can be times where they might go head to head with the Marlies, which is not a great thing in that time slot right before a Leaf game. And I think in the last couple of years there's been a shift, because a lot of like junior hockey, like if you were playing in the Mississauga Hockey League, let's say, or the GTHL, you know, a lot of junior hockey the kids were playing on Saturdays before, right? So I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of teams had their games on Sundays. And there's been a shift in that over the last couple of years where a lot of the games are on Sundays now. So I feel like the Steelheads are recognizing that and moving their games to Saturday, which is fine if that's the reason, because I've always really enjoyed the Sunday 2 p.m. games. It was just
Yeah.
something that was different, and the Leafs never played that day, at least if you're from this area, right? But the Saturday at 4 o'clock, I think it's a little bit too late. You might be competing with the Marlies and also the Maple Leafs because people are going to want to be home to watch that or doing something to watch that. So 2 o'clock, like you said, might be a little bit better. But if the move to Saturday is because you might get a better attendance because kids are playing on Sundays instead now, which I did notice that shift a couple of years ago, then I think that's fine. Right, then if you have a better chance at bringing more people into the arena on a Saturday, then I think then you do that.
Yeah, and it works out because like I remember as a kid, the majors would do 3 and 3 on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So they would do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they would have like a ticket package deal where you get tickets for all 3 games, you get popcorn, and everything else.
Yep.
So I wonder if they were gonna kind of go back to that way because like back then it was more Saturday games, and then they just started doing more Sundays instead.
Right. Yeah, and then it kind of went to just Friday, Sunday, and like they would have
Yep.
maybe a Tuesday game or maybe it was a school day game, right? Like it was
Yeah.
really, really only those 2 days for a long time, I remember. So
Yep.
they're kind of getting away from that, and I think it's okay to experiment with certain things, especially it's in a new city and the arena's in a new location. I mean, for us and most fans who are continuing to come from obviously the Mississauga days, and there are some new fans too, and people coming back who cheered for the Battalion, but it's not much further, right? Like it's really not that much further, but like you said, like that 7:30 start would help anyway, even if they were back in Mississauga. So I think that it's an interesting topic of conversation, but like a 7:30 start on a Friday and maybe Saturday games is the way to go if they don't, if the Sunday thing isn't working out. I'm biased a little bit. I do like the Sunday afternoon game still, but yeah, it was interesting, at least
Yeah,
on
it
the
is.
Saturday.
We'll get used to it as time goes on.
Yeah. So that being said, London Knights come into town. A lot of people came to see Easton Cowan. He was still with the Maple Leafs. Obviously, at the time of this recording, he's been sent back to the London Knights, and they won't be returning to Brampton for the rest of the year. Normally, they play like kind of in the middle of the season, but this year it was very early for some reason. But a lot of people in town to watch Easton Cowan, and London is supposed to be a great team. They're supposed to be a pretty good team still this year, and Brampton did not care about that. The Steelheads did not care about that. Foot on the gas all game, except for maybe the third period a little bit at times.
Yeah.
But I mean, great performances from the top guys. Ivan Kovic was brilliant. Tell me what you saw, Mark, because what I saw was a team determined and they never really let up and they rolled over the London Knights.
Yeah, they didn't let up at all. Like I said, they scored 16 seconds in. They just kept scoring and scoring and scoring, and then Ivan Kovic was making some big saves, and they didn't really let London get into it. Like, yeah, London scored a couple goals, but they just shut them down. They didn't allow them to be pushed around or nothing.
No.
They do need to stay disciplined though. That was one thing we talked about last year, so they can clean all that up. They should be good for the rest of the way. But no, they were there for each other, each other's backs. And they all played a good 60 minutes of hockey.
They did. I mean, they let up a little bit at the end, and Ivan Kovic had to make some big saves, but you're going to have to rely on your goaltender at some points. And if you have to rely on a guy like Ivan Kovic, I think that's a good thing. I think that's totally fine. And one interesting stat from this game that I thought was crazy is that the Steelheads scored 6 goals. They ended up winning 6-3. They scored 6 goals within the first 2 periods. They didn't score a single goal in the third. And they were 1 for 7 on the power play. So they did all of that without the power play, really. But it was a little bit of a messy game. There was a lot of 4-on-4 as well. And a lot of shenanigans and whatnot. But Zidlicki finally kind of broke out for the season as well.
Yeah.
First time we kind of heard from him as well. And Sova scoring. Sova's been pretty good, jumping in the play a lot for a defenseman, definitely.
I've noticed for a big guy too.
Yeah, and he's been pretty a great addition, I think, so far. Great pickup from JR and co. But yeah, I mean, the star of this one, I think, was Raycroft again, because I mean, both of his goals just you can't stop them at this level. Like, nope. I felt bad for the London goalie because they were laser shots and just doing what he does best, creating space and scoring. So it was nice to see him get on the board. And obviously Martone had a great game as well.
Exactly, and like Rakoff's shots, like it's an NHL caliber shot.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is. That second goal, I was like, oh boy, because it was that that goalie was not stopping that. Also, before we move on to the Sunday night game, or the Sunday afternoon game, I should say, nice to see Stevie Leskovar back from development camp. Obviously, would have liked to see him stay there and make the team, but nice to see him back in Brampton with the team. He joined the team after the game in Barrie, or for the game in Barrie, I should say. So he's back with the team officially now, and he's a big piece of the team. So they're going to need him going forward. And
he made his presence known early on Saturday. That was his first game back on Saturday, so he laid some hits.
That's right. He was throwing the bod, and he was connecting, doing what he does best, playing his game, right? So
exactly.
A lot of NHL teams and teams in the OHL in general are looking for guys like him now, because there's so many skill guys now that you kind of forget about the guys who create space and lay the bod like he does. So nice to see him back in the lineup, and he brings a different element to this Steelheads team. So it's fun to see that. And I know you've done a lot of articles about him as well, so, and how he kind of fits into the team, and he could have been he was one of your picks for captain as well, and obviously he's got the A, so nice to see him back.
Oh yeah, definitely. And he's got a letter on his jersey, so he's a good part of their leadership group.
Definitely. Yeah. Now we do have to turn the page to the first loss of the season, which I never thought on Saturday. After watching that game Saturday, I was like, the Steelheads are never going to lose again. It was like the Shoresy bit where they'll never lose again. And I was feeling pretty confident that I would never see the first loss of the season. But a little bit of a surprise, I would say. Maybe some people wouldn't say a surprise, but the Niagara Ice Dogs this year have come out and they have not lost a game yet. They're 4-0 on the season, leading the Eastern Conference. And they came out, and obviously Steelheads playing their backup. They played the night before. They played on Thursday. Yep. Maybe a little bit of a recipe for disaster. Maybe a little bit of that. But not an ideal game, losing 7-3 to Niagara. Niagara's a great team. They've shown that so far this year. We also got a goalie fight. There's a lot of shenanigans going on, so that was interesting to watch. What did you see from this one? And I mean, I'm not going to panic about this one. Niagara's clearly a good team this year. You're going to lose at some point. This is the way to do it, I think.
Oh yeah, you've set the tone of them. So when they come here in November, I will be there because I want to see some fireworks.
It's gonna be a crazy game.
Especially with the way how the Brampton Arena is set up. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
No, I unfortunately I missed the game yesterday, but I caught the highlights, and yeah, it was a wow, to say the least. I didn't think it'd be that far apart of a game.
Right.
And what threw me off was I got your message of Ivan Kovic getting into a fight. So I'm like, what? It was on Twitter, it was on Chicklets, and I'm like, okay, well, what's happening here? You don't want your star goalie to fight.
No.
Especially the Ice Dog goalie did a bad move, did a no, punching a guy while he's down. So good job, buddy.
Yeah, continuing to punch one down. But I think the thing that was confusing about it too, maybe for a lot of people, and I don't know if you felt this way too, it was that he wasn't in net to start the game. So
no, he wasn't.
When you see Jack Ivankovic in a fight, you're like, I thought he wasn't in net. After 5 goals, obviously he was put into the net, gets into the fight, and then leaves the game. So
can't blame him. He played 6 of my day. I'm gonna start a fight.
Yeah.
But no, I think for the backup Gibbons, we've talked about this last year, and I covered it in an article. They still haven't learned the goaltending situation. Ivankovic should have started Saturday, Sunday, and then Gibson should have gone Thursday.
Yeah, they are continuing to. I mean, I understand why they do it, because they want to guarantee certain wins, right? You want to play your best lineup. I do get it. But they're continuing to sometimes feed an inexperienced backup goalie to really good teams because they want to guarantee a win on another night, right? When in reality, maybe you give whoever you have coming up in 3 games, let's say, you give the backup goalie the weaker team per se, right? Even though I think in these 3 games there wasn't really a weak team, but Barrie might have been the weakest of them all, right? But so maybe you give the backup goalie that game, and then you kind of give yourself the best chance of winning against the higher ranked teams. But anyway, that didn't happen. But they continue to do that. You do have to secure wins for your team, and they do get 2 this weekend, which was good. The power play probably needs a little bit of work in terms of clicking. It was a bad game, so I'm not going to put too much into 0-5 in
No,
this game.
it
But
doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah.
the one thing that I did really like is because I was watching the third period, that they didn't give up. It was foot on the gas in the third period still, and they were pushing for goals, and they ended up getting one, right? Even though they were down. And yes, you might not win, but they're still throwing hits, they're still playing aggressive, and they ended up getting a goal. So I really like that from them. They didn't just fold it in the third period and go out there and just go for a skate. So I think that was good. And I have not seen a period so far this year where they really kind of collapsed on themselves and haven't looked great. I mean, there was one period in this game, I guess, but I haven't really seen defeat from them yet. They kind of try and bounce back every time, which is good. I think it's a great sign.
Which is a good thing. It's something different. That's what you want in a championship team, or for a team that wants to win the championship.
Right. So good signs from the Brampton Steelheads so far. And then another busy weekend going up to Barrie again this weekend, if we want to preview that quickly. They play a really good team in the Windsor Spitfires coming into Brampton on Friday night, and not so busy of a weekend. It's going to be fun, yeah. And it's not so busy of a weekend, only 2 games, but obviously back-to-back. They play Barrie on Saturday night. So, again, playing 2 pretty strong teams. And obviously, somewhere down the line, they'll get a break in playing some weaker teams. But to start the year, playing a lot of pretty good teams. And it's going to be another exciting weekend. Obviously, like I mentioned, Windsor off to a really hot start as well. So, it's going to be some good hockey. And Saturday, too. You want to get points from teams like Barrie, North Bay, like divisional rivals. You need to get these points from these guys. But that being said, you obviously want to win against Windsor as well.
Exactly. I can see them either getting 4 points, 2 or 3 out of this.
Right.
I say 3 because of an overtime loss.
Yeah. So hopefully they come away with 4 points, but we'll see how this weekend goes. They're playing great. I'm not going to put too much into the Niagara game, and obviously as the course of the season goes, things are going to happen. So I think they're off to a great start and showing promising signs. And obviously they're down to 3rd place because the OHL has, the kind of divisional seeding. So Ottawa's ahead of them with only 6 points right now in 2nd place. And then in 1st place is Niagara because they have not lost yet, even though they're tied with the Steelheads. So we'll see how this weekend goes. But pretty good start to the season for the Brampton Steelheads.
Yeah, it's been good for them, and as well as we talked today, or I talked today on my article about their depth too has been good.
Yes.
With McDonnell, Zidlicki, Misa, Van Bolsen, all those guys have been good. And as you know, I pointed out Lucas Carmirez. He's been a player I've noticed the last few years. Like he's in there, man. Like I even tell you, he's got like that. I said in my article, he's got that Zach Hyman type.
Yep.
Like hockey, where you could put him anywhere on the ice, he can score. And Darius quietly 5 points in 5 games.
Yes, he's been
picking up where he left off in the playoffs last year and in the regular season.
He's been very consistent. He's not like Martone, very flashy, like, oh, wow, 13 points in 5 games. No, he has 5 points in 5 games. He works hard for his points, and he creates his own opportunities. Like you said, like Zach Hyman, he's the same kind of player. So I think that's an interesting comparable. And if you want, go check out Mark's article. That's already out about the Steelheads' depth and obviously Carmirez. And, yeah, he's been a great, obviously, addition to the team, but the fact that they've kept him and what he's able to offer them in, like, the 2nd, 3rd line or wherever JR has him on whatever given night has been really good. And, again, another goal in last night's game against the Niagara Ice Dogs. So he's great, man. He throws the body around too, and very physical, and he creates his own chances. He works hard for it.
He does. He knows where to be on the ice. And I guess one more thing before we wrap it up, we should mention about Quinton Musty requesting a trade out of Sudbury. That's big.
2 things we're going to mention before we wrap it up, actually.
Ooh, I like it.
Your marketing strategy for the Brampton Steelheads we'll mention now that he's sent back to the OHL.
Yes.
But, yes, like you mentioned, just to set it up, Quinton Musty has been sent back from, I believe, the San Jose Sharks organization.
Shocking.
Yes, to the OHL, where he's property of the Sudbury Wolves, and he hasn't reported yet, and he is property of the Wolves, and the Wolves came out and said, we're not going to trade him unless there's a trade that basically blows us out of the water, and we'll accept it, and other than that, he's welcome to join us, but he hasn't reported yet. So obviously it looks like there could be a trade on the way for it, and he's a high-end player. He would be a great player in this league, obviously. We saw it last year.
Of course.
So there is a world, because Mississauga still has a lot of assets that they can move. Sorry, Brampton. That's going to take a while to get used to. But they still have a lot of assets they can move for a player of this caliber.
I think they should be in on him. I think Musty, Raycroft, and Martone. My God, a
That is a
line of those three. Yeah, you're not stopping that line.
no. It would be very difficult to stop, and then you're rolling out a second line and a third line that is probably tops in the OHL as well. And you had
100%.
you had another strategy for not only bringing people into the building, but obviously making the Steelheads better that we were going to discuss last week, but we ran out of time. And what is that, Mark?
So my marketing strategy for this team is, I think if you're JR, you give a call to the London Knights and you pay whatever it is to trade for Easton Cowan to bring him to Brampton, and you're marketing in this city for a top end player like that, fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, the odds of that happening are so slim because I think now that he's going back to London, they're going to try to go win another championship. But I'm just saying, from a marketing strategy, it makes so much sense. You would fill people up. It would be different from the time opposed to when the Steelheads had Stuart Percy,
Yep.
because that pick still boggles my mind from Bryanberg. But like getting a guy who is a top end guy, puts up points in a market like Brampton, you'd get people to fill up every game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
And
people would want to see a Leafs prospect, right? And then on top of that, he would help the team. He's one of the best players in the OHL. Now that he's sent
yeah,
back officially, he is one of the best players in the OHL. So that would certainly help. And obviously, like I do think London would probably want to hold on to him and try and repeat, but they're not exactly what the team that they were last year. But they obviously they have
right.
great pieces still. But if you're looking at teams like Brampton, Oshawa, Windsor, Saginaw that are really pushing for that OHL championship this year and winning. Maybe there is a world where they're like, you know what? Let's recoup some assets for this player. We're not going to see him next year because he's probably going to be with the Leafs or the Marlies, and they look to move him. So it's going to be pretty interesting.
Oh, it will be.
It's going to be pretty interesting. He might end up getting moved, and could Brampton be the destination? I think it would be in Brampton's, like you said, JR's best interest, not only for the team, but a lot of Leaf fans would come out to watch him every game.
100%. And he would already look good in the blue and white anyway. So I mean,
That's
it's a
right.
win-win for everybody.
Yeah, he would look very
Like,
similar to what he'll look like with the Leafs. So
it's just a preview.
that's right.
But no, it would be I think it would be a good marketing strategy. I think if you can get either, I said Cowan would be good. I doubt it. Michael Misa would be an interesting trade. You want to get someone in there, top prospect for this year too, I believe.
Yep,
Or I think Musty'd be a good addition too. You can get people to come out to watch the team. Get one
definitely.
of those three guys.
Definitely. And I think that there is another move, maybe not soon, but probably coming around the trade deadline for the Brampton Steelheads, because they still have quite a few assets that they can move and they can add to the team that's already pretty stacked and playing really well. So it's gonna be a fun season and a great start to the season for sure. But Mark, any closing remarks?
I will say that this team sort of reminds me of the 2011 majors.
And why is
They
that?
went all, they went all in on that offseason. Take this in. They went in all that offseason. They got Mark Canton. So basically, this year they got on defense. So this year they got Spencer Sova,
No.
same type of player. They got Justin Shug, who was a goal scorer. They got Carson Raycroft in a trade. Who was he? A goal scorer. And then in that season, Darius, JP got into a fight that he didn't even start.
It's becoming too real. It's becoming too similar.
We're coming full circle with everything.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Honestly, we'll see what happens. It's similar. I mean, they did start off like 10-0-1 or something. So this team can go 5, maybe 10-1-0. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, the Steelheads can definitely still do that. It's going to be an exciting weekend coming up here, and obviously a lot of tough teams coming up first. But get those out of the way and get some big points. But we will see you all next week, and hopefully the Steelheads will have another 4 points and some entertaining games, because this week it was pretty entertaining, which is nice too.
Exactly. It was.
Yeah.
It was.
So we will see you all in the next episode.